Hello friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. And this is part 2 in the series on making your own custom character crocheted hat. So make sure you check out the full playlist I'll be linking to down below, because the first part is on just making the cap itself. And I go over some various options for whether or not you want the stripes. And if you don't want the ear flaps, what you can do around the border. And the next part, I'll be going over how to make various types of ears and such for the hat, depending on what kind of animal, character, and so on you're going to make, if you're going to do that. So what I have here is, you'll see that I did not finish off this edge, because when I go into making the ear flaps, I'm going to start right where I left off that last round. And so the stitch numbers I'm giving are based off the child's about age 4-ish on up through adult hat, but I do have the stitch numbers and rows for the ear flaps according to the size that I'll have typed out for you, and it's just going to be very basic. I'm just giving numbers, and like if you see something like this where it says 10 times 3, that means 10 stitches times 3 rows. That's what that means. And so I'm going to have it typed out very simply. This is the way I read it. This is how I type it up for myself, but that's also why I'm doing the video, so I can explain it. So for each size, the ear flap is obviously also going to be a different size. But for the larger size hat, you're going to start with 14 stitches, and you're going to do 3 rows. So I'm not doing a chain stitch and starting a new row. I'm just going right into crocheting that ear flap. So I'm doing 14 stitches across. And again, I'm working with the J size hook and using single crochets only. Okay, so that's the first row. So now I'm going to turn back. Now you can, if you want, you can do the chain and then single crochet. I don't prefer to work that way. I just start working immediately back into that stitch. So I'm doing another row of 14 right across the original row of 14. And then after that, I'll do a third row of 14. So I'll speed this up and come back when I go to the row after that. So there is my 3 rows of 14. So now the next 3 rows are going to be 12. So this first row of 12, what I have to do is actually decrease the amount of stitches on each end. So I pull up a loop in the first stitch, I pull up a loop in the second stitch, then I wrap and pull that through. So that's how I'm decreasing by 1. And then I'm going to do the same thing when I get to the end of this row. I'm going to pull up a loop in each of the last 2 stitches to take the last 2 stitches and bring them down to 1 stitch. And that way I'll have 12 stitches on this row. So here's that. Now here's my last 2 stitches, pull up a loop, and in the last one, pull up a loop, and then wrap, yarn over, and then pull through all 3 loops. Now, I'm going to do 2 more rows across that as is with no decreases. All right, so now I have 3 rows of 12 stitches across, so 3 of 14, 3 of 12. Now I'm going to do a decrease again, going down to 10 stitches, and repeating that same thing where I do 3 rows of 10. Okay, so now that I've done the 3 rows of 10, I'm going to decrease yet again, but this time obviously I'm going down to 8, so decreasing that first 2 stitches, but instead of 3 rows like I did with the 14, 12, and 10, only 2 rows of 8. Okay, 2 rows of 8. Now I'm going to decrease again down to 6, and again only 2 rows for this one. Okay, there's 2 rows of 6. Now I decrease down to 4, and I'm only going to do 1 row of 4. 1 row of 4, decrease again down to just 2, and just 1 row like that. because now what you're doing is you're basically just bringing it to a point. And then I turn, take the last 2 stitches, decrease them down to 1 stitch, and there's the body of the ear flap. Now it might look a little thin, but remember there's going to be a border all the way around this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a single chain, then I'm going to leave enough of a tail here that this is going to work into the braid. And of course, how long you leave that is going to depend on how long you want the braid, but typically I'll bring it up to my shoulder as a good measurement. And you have to realize when you go to make that braid, it's obviously going to be a lot shorter than that. Okay, so there's the first ear flap. Now here's the thing that people, when they first start making ear flap hats or designing them, don't quite get right, because I did the same thing in the first hats I was making, is that you don't want your ear flaps to be exactly opposite each other like this, or the hat will look funny. Your ears are actually closer together in the back than they are across the front. So you need to actually have a much shorter distance between the 2 ear flaps in the back than you would in the front. And what I found for this size hat, the perfect number across in the back is to have 14 stitches. And so that's about half of what you're going to have across the front. So working with that, it doesn't matter which, I'm going to choose this part to be the back because of where this is. So that's closer to the back. And then I'm going to count in 14 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay. But since I'm going to be crocheting this way, so it matches that direction, I'm going to go ahead and count over another 14. This is the space. This is where my stitch is going to end, my ear flap. So 1, 2, counting that stitch, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. That right there is where I want to start. Okay, so you'll see there's a pretty distinct difference between the spacing. So I should have actually put the yarn on the hook before I did this, but I just went ahead and marked my stitch where I want to start so I don't lose that. And now I'm going to take my yarn here, get it on my crochet hook, and then I'm going to start, and then I'm going to repeat that whole thing that I just did on the other side. So I'm not going to shoot all of this. I'll come back when this part is done and I'm ready to start the border around the hat. All right, now that I have the ear flaps done, because I'm doing the braid, which you don't have to, it's going to be a matter of choice, then what I'm going to do when I go to start my border colors, I'm going to start them at the tip of either one of the ear flaps, and I'm going to match, and I'm doing 2 strands, as you'll see. I'm going to match the length of that up with the length of the piece that I left there in the gray. And so that's where I want to start. Now, this isn't going to be the whole braid. These 3 strands only make up a part of the braid. It's just a way you can work them in there, and then you have less ends to work into your hat. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with just a regular single crochet here. Now I'm going to start working backwards, doing a reverse single crochet. You can do a regular single crochet around if you prefer. The nice thing about the reverse single crochet, it just kind of adds a nice little twisted look to the hat, and it just gives it a different look all around. But either way, having some kind of border stitch is really going to add a finishing touch. And I've done hats where I just did a regular single crochet, and then sometimes I do this reverse single crochet. It takes a little bit longer to work the reverse single crochet than it does to move forward, but again, I like this look that it gives. So when you're working into the ear flap, again, you're working in the end of the rows. So there's a little space there, just go right into that space. And then obviously when you're working around the edge of the body of the hat, you'll be working right into the regular stitches of the single crochet, the 2 top loops, just like you normally would. And you see this end piece here where I started that? you can actually be crocheting right around that, so you're naturally working it into the hat as well. So yet another piece that you don't have to work in later. I try to do that as much as possible. So I'm going to continue around. I'll be speeding up a lot of this just to keep this video from being too long. Okay, now that I'm at that the corner, the tip of that next ear flap, right here I want to put 3 stitches in that. It's going to give it a more rounded look. So 3 stitches in that end stitch, and then continue on around, and when you get back to where you started, add 2 more stitches into this end right here. And then when I get to that point, what I'll do is I'll show you then how you're going to put your braids together. Okay, so now that I've finished my round, my border all the way around, and that's the other thing about the reverse single crochet is it kind of sticks out a little bit this way, where if you just did a regular, you know, even with a double yarn, if you just did a regular single crochet, it doesn't come out as much. So it's just going to depend on the look you want. But as you can see at the end of the ear flaps, I have one side that has a bunch of yarn and one that doesn't. So that means when I go to make the braid for this side, I'm going to actually be putting another piece of each of the colors in here than I will in here, or at least of the 2 colors I did the border in. So typically what I do is I use a total of 6 strands of each color. So I'll pull them off the 3 colors at the same time. And so I start by going roughly with the measurement of the main piece I started with. Okay, then I fold that in half. That's going to give me my full length that I need. And then from that point on, I will use that long piece there as a guideline. It doesn't have to be exact because you're going to trim it anyway when you get to the end. That's why I like to have a lot of extra. So for the side that doesn't have all the pieces of yarn, it just has the one single gray, I'm going to cut a total of 6 of each of these colors out. Okay, so there we go. I have 6 strands of each color right here. So again, that's going to go on this side, the side that only has the one gray strand. When I go to put that on, it's going to be the same no matter which side you do. It's just this side is going to have more. And you can do less. If this feels like too much, you want a thinner braid than that, then you might want to put less yarn in there, like maybe 4 of each color or 5 of each color. And it's actually easier if you use a bigger hook to pull it through with. But basically you just fold that yarn in half, and then you stick your hook through. I stick it from the back side, and then pull up a loop. Don't pull it all the way through, and make sure whatever piece you've got in there is added in. And then you're going to reach 2 fingers through, a thumb and a forefinger, and grab all of that yarn. And again, don't worry if your ends are not perfect. I like to cut a lot of excess so that I have plenty to work with. I know I can get the braid as long as I would like it, and then also have plenty to trim when I get to the end. Okay, so there's that one. Now I'm going to do the same thing on the other side with all of these pieces. So that means that's more I got to make sure that I grab and pull through there. But I'm going to do less. And so I'm going to cut 5 of each and then 1 more of the gray. Okay, so there we go. 5 of each plus 1 extra, 6 of the gray. And then, just like with the other side, let's get those over there. I'm going to fold that yarn in half, stick the yarn through here, or stick the hook through there, grab all of that and pull it through, and then try to even up the ends down there as much as possible. And then take your thumb and forefinger, stick it through that loop, Pull all of those through, and then make sure you also grab these pieces here that were a part of the border itself, and then pull everything tight. Okay, and then from there, you're gonna turn those into braids. So here comes the long process then. This to me takes a long time of taking all of your colors and then separating them. You don't have to separate them by color, but in my personal opinion, it does look better when you have all the gray together for one section of the braid, all the white together, or whatever 3 colors you're using, and then of course in this case all the pinks together. So just figure out which way you're going to go with it, and then divide those up as best you can. Well, you want them fully divided if you don't want your braid looking mixed like this. If you want the braid to look like that, then all you got to do is divide the yarn up as evenly as possible to make your 3 parts of your braid. And then I like to make sure that I'm starting the braid so that the hat is facing out like this when I start it. Still got a couple pieces here that need to get where they belong. And then just start working your braid over and behind, switching sides each time, just like you normally would. I'm sure most people already know how to braid by now, and this isn't going to be an instructional video on braiding. And just keep going until you get to the end. Okay, now that I'm at the end, obviously you're going to have some left as for the fringy part of the braid. But you also, what I like to do is make sure I braid it as close to as I can down to the end. And then I'm gonna tie a knot here. That's gonna hold it together. And then also that gives it another kind of completed look having that knot. So I just take the whole cluster and just tie it into a single knot, making sure all my pieces are pulled through as they should be. You want the knot part to also be braided. That's why you want to braid it down a little bit farther. Now, it's all uneven there. And so what I'm going to do is find the shortest piece and then trim it to that. And there we go. There's the first completed braid. Now, I do recommend if you're doing this on a baby hat, don't use near as many strands. I would say an infant hat or newborn, use only 3 of each color for max, because this is a pretty thick braid right there, but I like that for this type of hat. I'm going to go ahead and complete this braid off camera and then take a picture of the whole hat before adding the ears, but I want to give you another idea of what you can do if you like the braided look, and maybe you're not doing an animal hat, you don't want the kitty ears or whatever on there. You can make a 3rd braid, just like I did, cutting at the same length, same amount of pieces, 4, 5, 6 colors, 6 strands of each color. And then, just like you did here at the end, pull those pieces, make your loop, pull it through the top of the hat right here, then separate out your colors and braid it. And you won't have to work any ends in on the inside because that's the loop. So that's what you'll see in these other photos like I'm showing right here of hats where I've done that. All right, well, that's it for the ear flap and the border of your hat. So the next video, again, I'll be talking about some details, specifically more about different types of ears, but I'll be covering some other details like how to make eyes, different ways that you can make eyes, and other such details you may want to put onto the hat. And again, I'll put the link to this full chart down here. And as you see in some pictures, here are some more examples like I showed in the last video of various hats I've designed and made in the past. A lot of these were custom orders, like somebody specifically wanted me to make a hat that looked like their dog, where one ear was up and one ear was down, a black and white. It was a Borgie is what it was, a border collie corgi mix. And once you get these basics down, If you just kind of work with your yarn and the shaping, learning how to do decreases and increases, you can come up with a design that's going to work. So I've made all kinds of hats. I don't even think I have pictures of all the hats I've made, but just playing around with different shapes and different styles and just kind of having fun with it. I'll not only be putting the Crochet 101 playlist for those who are new to crochet, where I go over all the basics, such as how to get the yarn onto the hook, how to do your chain stitch, single crochets, double crochets, plus a few other things that you'll need to know in getting started in whatever it is you're going to make. Plus, I have other more simple patterns that I've put out there in video format. And this particular playlist, even though all these videos will be in the 101 the Crochet 101 playlist, I'm doing these in a playlist on their own. So both links will be in the description box down below. All right, well, I hope you're enjoying this series, and I hope you're having fun being creative with the ideas I'm giving you. Thanks for watching. Take care, and God bless.